For those who may not be aware, John Fetterman actually had to deal with, he had a health scare. I believe it was a stroke. Don't quote me on this. I thought it was a stroke. But anyway, he was hospitalized and he was told that he needed to take care of his health. So if you're told you need to take care of your health, that means your campaign may have to take a little bit of a breather. You may not be able to be out on the ground all the time as much as you were before. This happens. So he decided to do that, to take care of his health. Now, Dr. Oz, and I can't believe I used to watch this guy's show. I really cannot believe I used to watch Dr. Oz. I realize he's such an ass. Anyway, Dr. Oz is now making a big deal about the fact that he feels like he's basically running alone and that his opponent isn't really doing anything. So I want to give a shout out to K-Study QB for this clip. He goes on to say John Fetterman is not debating. Oz complains about John Fetterman not debating. I'm dancing with myself. Woe is me, Dr. Oz. Let's go ahead and play this clip. Let's get into it.
If he pulls this off, what basically Joe Biden did, but on steroids, by never leaving the house except maybe once a month or even less to say something, then we're going to see a whole new era where candidates never go out. Because, you know, when you go out and you get tired working 18 hours days like I do, you know, mistakes happen. People ask awkward questions, but folks challenge you. And then they start to make media out of that. My opponent's not out there. I'm dancing by myself. And it's a lot better to have both candidates out doing what they're supposed to do in a democracy. Be seen, be heard, and articulate why you believe what you believe. He has to defend his radical ideology. As you pointed it out, it's way to the left of everyone. Bernie Sanders and he have endorsed each other, and they call each other the two most populist candidates in the country. He's like AOC on steroids. He'd be the center of that team if the squad got together. If he pulls this off, what basically Joe Biden did, but on steroids, by never leaving the house except maybe once a month or even less to say something, then
I just want to pause it there for a second. So I just told you before I played this clip that he was hospitalized. So you see how Dr. Oz is trying to, he's really exaggerating this here. He's trying to make it seem like it's more extreme than it was. Like, it's not like John Fetterman just said, look, I'm just not going to participate and I'm just going to let people just come out and vote and I'm not going to go out on the ground anymore. He was hospitalized. Let him go on. He exaggerates more here.
We're going to see a whole new era where candidates never go out. Because, you know, when you go out and you get tired working 18 hours days like I do, you know, mistakes happen. People ask awkward questions, but folks challenge you. And then they start to make media out of that. My opponent's not out there. I'm dancing by myself. And it's a lot better to have both candidates out doing what they're supposed to do in a democracy. Be seen, be heard, and articulate why you believe what you believe. He has to defend his radical ideology. As you pointed it out, it's way to the left of everyone. Bernie Sanders.
Let's talk about that for a second. He says that John Fetterman has to defend his radical left ideology. First of all, it's not radical left. If you think about it, it's not radical left. John Fetterman said so himself in multiple interviews that he does not even consider himself to be a progressive. I've seen multiple interviews with him and he said he's a Democrat, which explains why he got an endorsement from Hillary Clinton. I talked about this about a month or two ago when that first happened. But you see how Dr. Oz is going to make it seem like he's this far left radical person. Now, he goes on to talk about Bernie Sanders here in just a second. And there's something I want to mention about that as well. I'm going to show you why Dr. Oz is a fraud.
Left of everyone. Bernie Sanders and he have endorsed each other, and they call each other the two most populist candidates in the country. He's like AOC on steroids. He'd be the center of that team if the squad got together.
Okay. You know what's interesting? Dr. Oz actually had Bernie Sanders on his show to talk about Medicare for all. He was on Dr. Oz's show. I don't know if everyone remembers this. This was before Dr. Oz decided to run for office. And in that segment, Dr. Oz actually agreed with Bernie Sanders. Like, I wish I could play it for you guys. I wish I could play it, but I can't because of copyright. But I really wish. I'm going to see if I can find it online, and maybe I'll post it on like the YouTube community tab so you guys can watch that episode yourself, because I'm like, now he's saying that he's all this radical, they're radical and far left and crazy. First of all, what people call left in the United States is not radical at all. It's not. Is it radical that all these other countries in the world have health care for everybody? That's radical? Okay. Okay, whatever. But this is what they do. So when I put in the title, John Fetterman and Dr. Oz Fear, it's because I feel like there's a lot of fear mongering surrounding this campaign. Now, for those of you who are watching, if you're in Pennsylvania, I really want to hear your opinion about this. How do you feel about either one of these guys? I don't know. I don't live there, but I want to hear what you think about them. Because the last time I checked, it looked as though John Fetterman actually has a better chance of winning this race. I think that Dr. Oz, for me, he just comes across as a fraud. Like I said, I told you, he agreed with Bernie Sanders about Medicare for all when he had him on his show. So he's doing what is going to work, or what he thinks is going to work for him as a GOP candidate, which is, let me smear the person running through the Democratic Party that I'm running against as this far left radical. That's what he's going to do, but he's not alone. And I say that because there's another one. So here we go here. Sean Hannity is also doing the same thing. Now, this is, again, shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. Hannity talks about John Fetterman's extreme left positions. And again, I'm going to show you something tonight about John Fetterman that I've shown it on here before, but if you're new, you may not have seen this. That's going to show you that he is not extreme at all. Anti-fracking, Green New Deal, ending the filibuster, packing the Supreme Court, legalized drugs. That is not radical. That is not far left. But listen to this segment here from Sean Hannity. You got to hear this. I can't make this up.
We are learning so much more about Fetterman's really extreme far-left positions on crime, anti-fracking, on new Green Deal socialism, ending the legislative filibuster, packing the court, legalizing drug dens, legalizing heroin, and everything in between. Here's a small sample.
I don't support fracking. I think it's something that has to eventually go away. And I would like to see it, I was on a panel with Secretary Wetzel earlier before the pandemic hit, and he said something remarkable that I agree with. He said, we could reduce our prison population by a third and not make anyone less safe in Pennsylvania. And that's a profound statement. Reimagine how we are dispatched to these scenes in terms of what's the best tool to bring. I think public safety.
Just like, wait a second, what are you talking about? Like, you want to legalize heroin, and why are you talking, why do you care about these things? And
we are learning so much more about Fetterman's really extreme far-left positions on crime, anti-fracking, on new Green Deal socialism, ending the legislative filibuster, packing the court, legalizing drug dens, legalizing heroin, and everything in between. Here's a small sample.
Extreme, he said. Extreme.
I don't support fracking. I think it's something that has to eventually go away. And I would like to see it, I was on a panel with Secretary Wetzel earlier before the pandemic hit, and he said something remarkable that I agree with. He said, we could reduce our prison population by a third and not make anyone less safe in Pennsylvania.
That's radical? Really? How is that radical? Yes, you can reduce prison populations. And part of the reason one of the ways that you could do that is if you free everybody who's there for marijuana. People who are there for like 20 years under Joe Biden's crime bills for like marijuana. Free those people. Yes, you can. Not everyone who is in prison is blah, 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 blah. Not everyone who is in prison for a violent crime. And even the ones who are in prison for a violent crime, they need to be rehabilitated in prison, which the prison system in the United States does not do. This is why you have people like Chris Hedges actually going to the prisons and teaching them. He's doing what the prison system should actually be doing, but they don't in this country. Now, in some other countries, they do. If you look at the prison system in Norway, they actually rehabilitate the prisoners. There's a whole documentary on this, by the way, where you go to like the prison systems in some of the parts of Europe where like the prisoners actually have their own apartment. They have a key. They can come and go as they please. They are actually rehabilitated there, and they give them that trust again. That is not what we have in the United States. And this is part of the reason why a lot of times when people are released from prison, they are more likely to become repeat offenders because they were never rehabilitated to begin with. Then it's really difficult for them to get a job as well when you have a criminal record. So there is no rehabilitation. We need to take that part out of it. So I don't see what's radical about this.
And that's a profound statement. Reimagine how we are dispatched to these scenes in terms of what's the best tool to bring. I think public safety.
Just like, wait a second, what are you talking about? Like, you want to legalize heroin, and why are you talking, why do you care about these things? And
we are learning so much.
Now, I don't have a problem with any of that. Any of it. In fact, and some people may not agree with me on this. In fact, some of my friends, my family members don't agree with me on this, but this is just how I feel about it. I think that all drugs should be legal. All. Ta-da! It is really not right for me or the government to tell people what they can put in their own body. I really do not care. I'm sorry. I feel like all of them should be. And I believe it is Oregon that decriminalized. Is it Oregon? Yes, I believe it's Oregon. It was about a year or two ago that decriminalized drugs. I'm sorry, but if you look at some other countries that have done this, like Portugal, for example, their crime rate decreased when they legalized all drugs. So no, I don't think they want to do that here in the United States because that actually helps the criminal justice system. That would hurt the police force because then the police departments wouldn't really have as many arrests to make. They wouldn't be out there arresting people for marijuana. This is why they don't want to decriminalize marijuana federally. This is why Joe Biden won't do it. Because then that would look bad for the police force because that's where they get a lot of people from, busting them for marijuana, busting them from other drugs. I don't care. I don't care. Whatever you want, that's your body, not mine. And for the people who will come back and say, and I know some people are going to come back and say this, but what about the children? What about the children? Responsible people will keep that out of their way. Come on, let's be real. For people who smoke marijuana, do you hand over marijuana to kids? No, you don't. That doesn't make any sense. I hate that logic. Now, that being said, the fear mongering that they're trying to use to turn people away from John Fetterman and towards Dr. Oz, I don't agree with that. I don't think he's far left radical. And even if he was, so what? Who cares? But I still say I don't think either one of them is a good option. And I have a couple of things I've said before about John Fetterman. There's one is the story where he chased down a black jogger. And I noticed like some people are talking about John Fetterman on their shows. And I've noticed that they are not mentioning that. And they know who they are. They're not telling their audience that John Fetterman chased down a black jogger with a gun. Someone who was jogging while black. Some of them are also not mentioning this. And I think this is important as well. Now, this was something that was also concerning to me. This was in reference to supporting Israel and Palestine. And those of you who have been following me for a long time, you know where I stand on this issue. So John Fetterman says He will lean in on U.S.-Israel relationship as senator. So again, what do we tell you at RBN? We stand with Palestine because the Palestinians are basically being treated the same way that Black people were once treated in the United States. And people can call me whatever they want. But this brainwashing that's happening in the Democratic Party, Republican Party, by the way, they agree on this issue. Democrats and Republicans, they agree on this issue. This idea that you have to back Israel. No, F that. As an African American, I stand with Palestine. It is what it is. Now, he goes on to say, John Fetterman, the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania and the Democratic frontrunner in next month's high-profile Senate primary, said he was eager to affirm his unwavering commitment, to bolstering ties between the United States and Israel in an interview with Jewish Insider on Thursday, emphasizing that he will lean in on such efforts if he is elected to the upper chamber in November. Boom. So you know where he already stands on that issue. Now he goes on to say, whenever I'm in a situation to be called on to take up the cause of strengthening and enhancing the security of Israel or deepening our relationship with the United States and Israel, I'm going to lean in. The relationship is a special one that needs to be safeguarded, protected, supported, and nurtured through legislation and all available diplomatic efforts in the region. So for me, if I was in Pennsylvania, I wouldn't be voting for him either. We have to pay attention to these things. Pay attention to this. Anyone who's out there promoting John Fetterman and they're not telling you those two things I just told you, that's suspect. You deserve the right to know. Just keeping it real.